Oh, morning. It's 6:30 in the morning. I'm on my way to Ipswich to meet a client and train them, and then I'm into Bury St Edmunds to meet another client for a chat, and then to train two people as just one-offs. Anyway, yesterday a few people had asked what I did, so I thought I'd try and explain it a little bit. Excuse me, a bit snotty this morning. Long day yesterday, 4:30 till about 10 o'clock I got in last night. So, I coach, so I do online coaching, though I do go see all my clients. But I don't do contest prep, so it's just off-season, getting big stuff. A spin-off from that is I've started doing training workshops where I'll go through people's routines and tweak them. More exercise technique stuff, just to make the exercises more efficient and more productive at what they're doing. Particularly with people that have a stubborn body part they can't connect to, they struggle to get a connection with. I work in a course as an expert witness, which is what I was doing yesterday, but I'll get onto that bit in a minute. I run my harm reduction company, and we do presentations on alcohol misuse, drug misuse, and obviously steroid misuse. I used to do a lot for the military, but they've ceased that now. That was subcontracted through another company, but that company's good, basically. I think they've lost the contract, or the contract no longer exists. I'm not quite sure. The military have been downscaling drug education quite dramatically over the last year. I do a little bit of those sort of presentations for the police, schools, other organisations of that nature. I'm negotiating, and I've done some needle exchange worker training, and I'm speaking to a few companies about doing some more of that. And I do the expert witness stuff. Now, I also teach. There is the Institute of Expert Witnesses that do a training course for expert witnesses. Now, what an expert witness is when a court case has a need for technical explanation, or subject matter that you don't expect the judge and jury to know about. So, for example, drugs and drug dealing, steroids, decomposition rates, animal health, anything. So, if you had someone that was in for dog abuse, then there'd be an expert witness statement from a vet explaining what was wrong with the dog, and in his opinion or her opinion, how they got to that state. And this is the thing about an expert witness, is it's your opinion is regarded as being correct. So you are an expert of you're allowed to give evidence of opinion. Now, in a court of law, evidence is factual. But as an expert witness, you're allowed to give evidence of opinion. So you're allowed to state your opinion as fact. So, for me, it's steroids. So generally the cases I deal with are supply or manufacture. Now, what will happen is somebody will get arrested. They'll get charged with manufacture or intent to supply. All the evidence is catalogued, both what there is there physically and also pictures of the environment and circumstances. Obviously that person gives an interview, gives a statement, and other parties involved may give a statement. That then will go internally to the police, to whoever in their force is regarded as an expert in that field, if it's drugs or steroids, or firearms or munitions. If it's outside of that, they'll call in outside professionals. So if it's a medical opinion they need, they'll call in a medical professional. And they'll write a statement based on what they see in the evidence, what the evidence can support. For argument's sake, you've got 200 Danabol tablets. You can't state that that's evidence of supply because the quantity is not high enough. So this is the sort of thing it is. And a big part of it is valuations. Now, as an expert witness, you're an agent of the court, so you actually work on the day for the court. but you're instructed by defence or by prosecution. So once the police have done their statements and they've pressed charges, they then forward all that to the defence. The defence then looks at an expert witness statement and they decide whether or not they feel they need to counter that. So they then contact a defence expert witness, which is me. I'm probably about the only one that does this properly. There is another guy called Martin, who's a mate of mine, who does it part-time as well. And it takes a little bit of time, and it takes a little bit of jumping through hoops and accreditations to get recognised by the courts as an expert in your field. So I will then look at the prosecution statement and I'll go through it, and if I feel there are factual or technicalities that are incorrect, I will address them in my report, and then I'll give my opinion of the evidence. And part of what I do is to state whether the evidence fits the defence that the defendant is giving. So if he says, oh, it's personal use and there's 2,000 vials of test, then there's no way I can say, yeah, that's correct. You know, I would say, no, that doesn't support that. I can't lie. You can be creative, but you can't lie. Now, there's a lot of rules and regulations about you being unbiased and professional and everything else that you must follow, and conduct and code and all this lot. Reports have to be done in a certain way. They have to contain certain things, statements of various facts and stuff. Now, then there's a couple of things that can happen. Both are submitted, and either party can argue for the adoption of their statement as being the one that's used in court. And sometimes this happens. Sometimes the police will turn around and go, yeah, right, fair enough. We can't argue with that. And so it'll be my statement that's adopted in court. So it'll be my evidence that guides the judge as to the value and as into the context of what these drugs are found. Sometimes that doesn't happen, and then it can go one or two ways. The judge can order resolution, and it's called hot tubbing, and we have to meet privately and try and come to an agreement, which very rarely happens, as in the actual agreement. So then we will go to court, we will both give our evidence based on our statements, and we will both be cross-examined by the alternate party, and it can get quite tasty. And they'll go after you personally, they'll go after, like for me with a criminal record, they go after me from a criminal record. I mean, I'm used to it now, it doesn't bother me, but they can get quite personal and they can really try and get in about you. Generally with police, they'll go in about that they're biased, that they're prosecution-based and that they're not neutral. So, but a good barrister will pick up on anything and try and rattle you and try and make you just look a fool. Now, judges aren't so easily swayed, but juries are. So if you come across a dick in front of a jury, the chances are the jury are not going to count your evidence as being quite good. But the other thing that can happen is the judge can rule and say, no, I'm using that evidence. That's the one I feel is correct. I'm usually at an advantage because my first statement is generally criticising the prosecution's statement, but the prosecution do have a right to return and answer my statement. So yesterday, the court case, I can't really talk, well I can because it's done now. Young lad, bit raw, it was homebrew. Whether he intended to go and take it further or not, God knows. Yeah, there was enough to make a bit of gear, but we weren't talking usual manufacturer amounts. And there was all sorts missing. There was only three types of raw, and there wasn't a price list, there wasn't a stock of production, there was nothing. It was all sat in a box in a cupboard. His argument was he'd bought it off a guy as a job lot. And to be honest, I think he was telling the truth. It did seem to fit everything that we were seeing. So prosecution had brought in a guy called Colin Gibson. He's used to work for the National Crime Agency, the big boys, and he was their top steroids expert. And for some reason, which I don't know, Colin had gone quite gung-ho with this. Oh, he's a dealer, he's this, he's that, the other. And the evidence just wasn't there to support his argument. So I countered this in a written report a month or so ago, and they hadn't responded. and they hadn't responded yesterday. And then at 9:30 the night before the trial, he responded, but it was not really a relevant response. His addendum, which is his additional to his report in response to my report, was just really going on about a lot of stuff that wasn't relevant. So when we got to court, prosecution brought this up. Sorry, defence brought this up with prosecution, that the report wasn't really relevant. And actually, surprisingly, prosecution agreed, and they pulled him. And they turned around and said they had lost confidence in him and his report would no longer stand, and they accepted mine, which was great from my point of view, because for me it's a win. But it also meant that I'd driven 4 hours to the armpits of Wales for nothing. So I turned around and drove back. But that's cool. That's what it's like. I enjoy it. The paperwork side can be hard work. I mean, some of these reports are 20, 25, 30 hours worth of work. When you've got to read through 3 years of mobile phone texts in a stack like that to decipher if the messages relate to sale or not, it can be a long process. But I really enjoy the intellectual jousting at court. In fact, when I teach on the expert witness training courses that I teach on, because I teach expert witness training 4 times a year, one of the things we do on the last day is mock court. And we literally get in about the students. They have all week to prepare a statement, and then on the Friday we just basically rip it apart. But I enjoy that intellectual challenge, and it's quite funny because a lot of people don't realise it can seem very, very personal when you're in court. Now, the guy I was against yesterday can get a bit arsey, but the guy that he used to do the job before him was a cracking lad. And we could call each other every name under the sun in the court and then walk out, and it's like, we'll go for a coffee. Hi, mate, your turn to buy one. You know, and stuff like that. And we'd sit outside of court and we'd negotiate whose points that we were disputing. And so it was a really good setup. This latest guy is a bit of a odd one for that. But he's left the police now. And apparently, well, after yesterday, it's doubtful he'll be getting much more work. Because if you get your evidence pulled by your side, it's a real bad situation for an expert witness to be in, because basically they're saying that you're not credible, that your evidence is shit and you're shit, effectively. And it's a small world, so it gets round very, very quickly. So that's what I was doing yesterday. Sorry about the long explanation, but it just it can be quite complex. Don't do a lot, because there's not masses and masses of court cases come up, and some court cases statements are quite irrelevant. I know a couple of big cases that are going on, and the police that are actually prosecuting the cases have rung me and asked me if I've got the jobs, and I've said no. And obviously they can't discuss much, but the basic outline is, well, there isn't a fucking defence to 30 kilo of raw powder in a lab. You know, what can you say? And so the only argument you've got with situations like that is just price management, because obviously all these criminal activities that people gain money from are subject to proceeds of crime order, a BOCA. So the greater the value of the drugs, the greater the proceeds of crime order, and that has to be paid. So sometimes it is literally just that, just valuations. But when the big jobs, I mean, the job he was particularly talking about, that would be about 2 weeks' work every day to create that report. Anyway, so that's what I was doing, and that's what I do. Okay, so I've got a 600-mile round trip today to see clients. Tomorrow I'm office-based. I've got a lot of plans to write up and change and adapt, etc. And then Friday morning I go to the lakes. I've got 2 hours with a client in the lakes doing posing practice. He's the only client that I'm getting ready for competition. And then I drive up to Edinburgh. I've got 2 clients in Edinburgh. And then I go to Glasgow, I've got a client in Glasgow. And then I go stop overnight, and then I start at Flex in Whitburn for PT sessions and a seminar all day. Finish at 7 and then drive home. So that's the rest of my week. Sunday, just curl up in a ball and cry to myself slowly. So take care, guys, and I'll speak to you soon.